So it is time for Weekend Wellbeing on the Weekend Wind Down Show. I'm Nathan Thomas here with Karen Ferguson from the Maven Club. Hi, Karen. How are you doing?
Hi, Nathan. I'm doing good, thank you. And how about yourself?
I'm very well. It's I'm really enjoying the arrival of spring, to be honest.
Hmm.
I'm not a big fan of winter. I know some people love winter. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are
Hmm.
some great advantages during that time, but it's definitely my favorite season as sort of, I mean, we're in my favorite season essentially. So I'm feeling
Uh-huh.
pretty happy.
That's good. I really like at this time of year the fact that the days just got longer again.
Yeah.
So it's really nice. I love going out for an evening walk
Mm,
and not feeling like you're battling so much with the elements. I mean, I live in Scotland, so there is a level of battling
yeah.
with the elements, but there's something about the days just being that little bit longer, isn't there, that I really enjoy.
It is nice being able to make, I guess, being able to be outside more because during winter it is a little bit harder. I mean, it's not that you can't
Yeah.
go outside, but it's going to be colder, wetter, probably windier,
Yeah.
and of course darker in the either end of the
Yeah.
day. So, yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic. Well, we've been looking at obviously on weekend well-being, how to look after our mental health. You've given us some
Mhm.
amazing advice on things like the 5-day encouragement. We looked at the
Mhm.
5 steps to well-being by the NHS, and just last week we were talking about not, well, essentially not being too harsh on ourselves, being kind
Mhm.
to ourselves.
Mhm.
I mean, there's that great, well-known verse of the Bible, do unto others as you would have them do to yourself. And you can't be
Very,
kind, you can't practice that if you are really harsh to yourself, can you?
yeah, that's so true. That's a good reminder, actually. Probably should get that one framed and put on the wall.
Yeah, yeah. So, what is our focal point for this evening?
Yeah, well, today I wanted us really to think about how we start and end well. Um, and again, a lot of this observation has come from my sort of professional environment that I'm in a lot of the time. But essentially, I first started to look at this when I was doing a lot of work with families. And what I would see, I'd recognize these sort of patterns of behavior where, again, it's a little bit like what we were talking about last week, where people can just be really harsh on themselves. That we tend to have this ability to hold on to the negative thoughts, and it feels sort of harder to grip onto the positive thoughts. Now, if if you were sort of a neuroscientist, you'd be able to talk about the pathways in our brain and you know what that looks like for negative thoughts versus positive thoughts. And I think there's all sorts of explanations, but in sort of more general lay terms, I think it's something like if you hear something negative about yourself, you'll believe it straight away. If you hear something positive, you might need to hear it 10 times before it starts to sink in. And I think that that's the reality that finds itself worked out in our daily lives. So, particularly when I was in the role where I was doing a lot of work with families and supporting families in terms of just, you know, kind of helping them to understand it's a tough role, parenting. It's really hard, and you know it kind of throws all sorts of curveballs all the time, and every so often you feel like you might have just mastered one part and then everything else kind of goes wrong. And what I've noticed is that parents particularly, but I think it's all of us in different contexts, were very good at focusing on what they'd done wrong. I think it sort of comes sometimes with parenting. We just sort of feel like we've messed up, or oh my gosh, our child's going to need such therapy for years because what have we done? Or and you're always learning on the job, and you're never quite feeling like you've arrived. And so what I notice with a lot of families is they could be doing 95% of their day fantastic choices, like doing a really good job feeding their kids, you know, helping nurture them, being a great parent, getting them to where they need to go, trying to help to, you know, guide them in life and give them sort of, you know, an idea of how to behave and all of these types of things. But at the end of the day, they'll remember the 5% where they didn't quite handle it how they wish they could, or they'll just be, again, that harsh on themselves. So it's almost like they'll cling on to the 5% and neglect the 95%. And so it led me to think about how do we help break that cycle, because I think, particularly in the world of, raising children, it's a long time. You don't get a break. It keeps going. And even when they reach adulthood, there's just a different version of parenting. It's not the same, it's not as intense, but it's still, you don't suddenly switch off and stop thinking. There's a different way to sort of being a parent when your children are adults. And so I was like, I really wanted people to have an opportunity to almost pause every single day and not to just go down this potentially negative pathway that just feels like you're never going to get this right. It's hard. It's exhausting. I've messed up again. And all this negative thinking. And so I felt that part of it was about getting reflective, but getting intentional as well. And so I introduced in some of the groups that I was leading, just this idea of at the start of the day, focusing on something that you want to flourish in today. So that might be, I want to get dressed, or it might be, I really want to just have 5 minutes playing with my kid or chatting with them or something like that. Just simple, achievable steps, but something you want to flourish in for that day. Um, and start that day with a sense of, this is what I'd like to see happen today. I'd love to flourish in this today. And then at the other end of the day, being able to sort of go, right, what do I need to forgive myself for today? So before going to sleep, going, okay, so that thing, yep, I lost it. I shouted at them, or I did this, or, oh man, I forgot to get them to their after school club, or whatever it is, what do I need to forgive myself for? And actually forgive yourself, hand it over and then just get over it. And then also, what can I celebrate? Because even if you've had the worst day, there'll be something in there. It's just that we stop noticing. So I'm talking about that in the context of parenting, but I feel this is relevant for all of us in every stage of life and in our context. But again, it comes back to looking after yourself, starting and ending a day well. It's not great for our sleep, which then has a negative impact on our well-being. If we're going to bed burdened, if we're anxious, if we're feeling, rubbish about things. So starting and ending well, what does that look like for you? Tomorrow morning, Saturday morning, how can you just wake up and think, I'd like to flourish in this thing today, but make it small and achievable. At the end of the day, if you don't achieve it, be quick to forgive yourself. But if there's anything else that you feel like, I can't believe that happened again, or I did that, just what is it that you need to forgive yourself for? And what can you celebrate? Let that be the last thing before you go to sleep. What is something in your day that you can celebrate? And I know that for some people, they are in such difficult circumstances and it feels relentless and it feels so hard and it feels as though, when is this ever going to end? And it might feel like that's easy for you to say, Karen, but I don't know what I can celebrate. I'm just trying to survive. Please try and forgive yourself for whatever it is that you're not happy about how you handled something that day, and just find the tiniest glimmer of something you can celebrate. Often it's that, hey, I could have lost it there and I didn't. Celebrate that you didn't, but let's start and end well. Start the day with an intentional thought or something you want to flourish on, because when we're intentional, it's much more likely to happen. And then reflect at the end of the day, giving yourself permission to be forgiven for something that you're not happy about, and then celebrating something that did go well.
Mm, that's really great, Karen. Thank you so much. I think that's a really great practice for every one of us. I mean, you talk about the idea of parenting, and absolutely that is, I suppose that can be really especially intense in that regard. But every one of us, we're gonna go through different situations, and we're gonna think, I didn't do that very well. I wish I could have done that better. But like you say, actually, sometimes it's the small things, the small successes. If you got through a day and nothing particularly calamitous took place, maybe that's a success. Because if
Celebrate.
you, yeah, like you say, sometimes we can't necessarily measure our success very easily because we
Mhm.
think, well, I can't see where I succeeded. But actually, well, for example, the children all ate breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They all had 3 meals
Yeah,
today, and
that's awesome.
yeah, nobody got hurt.
Yeah,
Something simple like that. I mean, we don't necessarily think of that as a success, but actually, we underestimate sometimes the influence, the effect that we've had in just the small
yeah,
things we do.
yeah,
We dealt with this little problem here, or we helped that person there. We made somebody's life easier in this regard, or actually, we didn't do that to an exemplary standard, but we did get it done. We got this job
yeah,
done. We got this task
yeah,
finished on time, and maybe that's enough. And because sometimes we
absolutely.
set rather high expectations for ourselves, don't we?
Yeah, yeah. It goes back to what we were talking about. Was it last week about being kind to
Mm,
ourselves? So yeah, we're really good at hearing and believing the negative and then sometimes being harsh. So yeah, looking after your well-being is about focusing on some of those positives or searching for them. Even if you have to dig deep, search for them because you will find some. You really will,
mm.
and celebrate those.
Yeah, it might be worth asking somebody actually as well if you're really struggling. Ask somebody, did I do something well today? Can you point to that? And I'm
Yeah,
sure they'll be able to come up with something.
that's a great tip, actually, Nathan, because I think sometimes, especially if we're really struggling with our mental health, it can be really hard to see anything.
Mm,
So asking somebody else for them to just find that, you could write this down at the end of the day. What do I need to forgive myself for, and what can I celebrate? And if you can't answer it yourself, go to somebody close to you and say, "Help me answer this because I need to see hope."
mm.
So yeah, great idea. Ask somebody else if you can't get there yourself.
Yeah, and what you're saying about being intentional at the beginning of the day and just letting things go at the end of the day is really helpful. Being intentional. If you say, "Well, I'll do this if I get the chance," it's not likely to happen, is it?
Yeah,
But if you say, "Okay,
absolutely.
I plan to do this today. That's my intention. I want to be able to tick that off a list, or something. I want to tick it off a mental checklist by the end of the
Hmm.
day," more likely
Yeah,
to happen. So that
very
that
much
is
so.
yeah. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Karen. Good to hear from you again. I
Thank
hope you have
you.
a fantastic weekend. Speak again soon.
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. Look forward to it. Have a good weekend.
Here at Pure 24/7 Radio, we have had the privilege of speaking to some amazing people with amazing stories.
Now, what about, I thought I'd go a bit further, what about goat and sheep's milk?
Yes.
Becoming quite popular. Very similar to cow's milk. So we don't use it in the first year of life, you can afterwards. And their nutrient profiles, how good they are, is pretty similar to cow's milk. Allergenicity, how often do they cause allergies? About the same. They're a bit more expensive sometimes. Yeah, it's pretty equivalent.
Yeah, we're really excited, especially excited for Josh because it's his first book and he's really passionate with that Gen. Do you say Gen Z or Gen Z? I've heard it said in.
I don't know. I'm too old. I don't know.
Yeah, we're not in that age category, so we've not got a clue what they're called.
It's a pot boiler. It's a good, exciting popcorn thriller. I didn't think it was anything too special, but I think watching it at home, people will probably enjoy it more than I did going to the cinema to sit. Really good film. I love it. I walk into a cinema and I turn my phone off. Nobody can get hold of me for a couple of hours. I'm in a completely other world. Every single time I go to the cinema, and for me, it's like going to Oz. It's like going to another world and escaping and relaxing, and I thoroughly enjoy it.
If you have missed any of these interviews or would like to hear them again, you can. Simply head over to our catch-up section at www.pure247radio.org. That's www.pure247radio.org.